Hey everybody, thanks for spending some time with us. It's hard to believe it's already December and we are wrapping up our 25th anniversary year. It's really kind of amazing. And yeah, it's been a journey for sure. Oh, I just noticed Judy and your family's here. Before we get started, I just want to send a shout out to Judy and her family. They had one of our lovely service dogs who passed last week, I think it was, and sending virtual hugs to you and the fam, Judy. Bogart was an awesome dog. We're going to talk about the history of Nsd. There's been over 800 dogs go through our program in 25 years. And I think the hardest part is as we've gotten older, our dogs age with us, and of course they're not with us as long as we'd like them to be. So with our 25 years comes some sad passings along the way in greater numbers than we've seen previously. But all the dogs that have passed through our halls are greatly appreciated for their the additions that they've made to so many lives. And yeah, shout out to Judy and her family. I think Bogart was 13, almost 14 if memory serves me. He was an old dude and he lived an awesome life. But to move on, without getting too deep down that piece of it, we're here to celebrate really 25 years of just awesome dogs, awesome people. 14, Bogey was 14.5. So that's pretty epic for a Labrador, and he was huge. So pretty cool. Yeah, so, you know, over 800 dogs, thousands of volunteers, thousands of donors, dozens of staff and supporters. It's been epic, to be honest with you. I started out my career in the service dog industry training hearing dogs for the deaf at the Lions Foundation, Dog Guides. It wasn't called Dog Guides at the time, it was just the Lions Foundation of Canada. But that's how I got my start. And if you had told me back in 1995 that I would go from doing hearing dogs for the deaf and hard of hearing to starting and ultimately running a charity like National Service Dogs, I would have told you you're nuts. I'm not a people person, I'm a dog person. Yet here we sit. So it has been a pretty epic journey, and I've taken the liberty of putting together a PowerPoint that just kind of will give everybody an overview of the last 25 years. Everybody who knows me knows I can talk for hours, so filling an hour is not going to be a problem. But it'll give you something other than me and my background here at my house to look at, and maybe take some people down a trip down memory lane as we go through it, and it'll keep me on track and off the tangents. So we started in 1996, and our very first name that we applied to through Corporations Canada was Canadian Service Dogs. We wanted to call ourselves Canadian Service Dogs, and they have strict rules about how the name Canadian can be utilized. So they rejected our first suggestion and our first application to incorporate as a nonprofit, and made us go back to the drawing board. And we came up with National Service Dogs, and that went through, and here we sit as NSD instead of CSD today. Our very first dog was a lovely dog named Shade, who went out to a 3-year-old who had autism. I and my fellow cohorts, the Fowlers, were all working at Dog Guides at the time, and somebody had reached out looking for an autism service dog, and back in 1996 they didn't exist. And we spoke to the family about what their needs would be, and we were just going to train the dog as a one-off for them to support their child. And Through them, we got connected with the Geneva Center for Autism in October 1996. We went to the Geneva Center for Autism conference that was on, and had 30 requests for dogs from the families that were there from across North America. The Geneva Center conference was a North American affair, and yeah, we had 30 requests for dogs. So that's when we decided that, you know what, we need to just stop what we're doing, start National Service Dogs, and just dive in and start working in the autism space. And that's pretty much how we got started, as something that was going to be a one-off, and here we are today. In the fall, actually late in 1996, we had a really great breeder whose name escapes me at the moment, donated a golden retriever, Melody, who's in the picture there. Melody came to us from a breeder in Sault Ste. Marie. So we actually had a breeding dog and an idea for a charity and puppies on the way before we even were incorporated or had a business plan or anything crazy like that. We did it completely backwards. I would not recommend it and have not recommended it to other people I've mentored through the service dog program development process. You can see there our very first logo for NSD. That was on the patches for the first few dogs that we put out. But Melody was an amazing dog. For those of you that have been with us for a bit, she was our foundation golden. She went on to have dogs named Summer. Summer went on to have puppies who were Echo, my dog Echo, Chris MacArthur's dog Abby, who had a bunch of puppies for our program. Ricky and the W's. We just lost some of our W dogs. They were 12 years old as well. Whoopi and some others of her litter have passed away recently, and all those dogs stemmed from Melody. She was awesome. She lived to be 15, and she was a great foundation dog for our breeding program. So we welcomed our first litter of puppies in 1997, and became incorporated as a not-for-profit and started the onerous task of getting our charitable status. That was a long process, but it worked out well in the end. Sorry, I just got somebody texting me trying to get in, Emma. Can you resend out somewhere, the link to Allison?
Yep.
Thank you. Sorry, guys. So that was 1997. That was a busy year. Lots of requests for dogs and just getting started on our puppy program. Part of what we were doing in 1997 was trying to figure out how to make money without a charitable status, because of course, without charitable status, you can't issue tax receipts. And it limits your fundraising options to dog washes, car washes, any types of events that are just go. We did a ton of what we called mall shows. We would go into the community booth at malls across Southern Ontario and literally beg for change just to pay the vet bills and keep the dogs fed. The Easter egg hunt came out of us thinking, you know, we wanted to do a scavenger hunt of some description. And we wanted to do a scavenger hunt of some description. And what was happening was we couldn't figure out the logistics. And then we come up with, well, why don't we get all those little plastic Easter eggs, stuff them with dog treats and prize stickers and throw them out all over the place and do that instead. And that's how the Easter egg hunt was born. We were trying to do fundraising events that we didn't have to issue tax receipts for donations for. And our first Easter egg hunt took place in Oakville at Bronte Creek Provincial Park. And I think we had about 30 participants. They all paid $20 each. We didn't make a ton of money that year, but we got the concept worked out, and it was really well received. And we rolled it out again in 1999 with double the number of people. And by that time, we had our charitable status. So we started to do the pledged event, and we went from raising just a few $100s to a few $1,000s. And then over the course of the next few years, we built it up from the Oakville hunt to, we had 9 of them going across Ontario and 1 in Calgary. The locations of the hunts have changed over the years, but it all got started with that one little event in 1998 that was just supposed to be like a scavenger hunt, and it is what it is today. So that was kind of fun, and it's become a family tradition. I know with my family, Good Friday was always hiking day. We'd always go out and do a big hike. And once the Easter egg hunt became a regular fixture in my life, I kind of hijacked our family hike every Good Friday and forced everybody to come out and volunteer for the event. And they've been doing that now for 24 years. My family has been an integral part of getting the Oakville and Hamilton area hunt done every year, and I'm very grateful for their ongoing support. They make it super easy. Also in 1998, we went from having all of our dogs in volunteer homes to renting kennel space in Petersburg. At the time when we first started, all of us were volunteers. For the first 4 years that NSD was in operation, from 96 to 2000, we were 100% volunteer run, and all the dogs were being bred, raised, and trained out of our homes and volunteer homes. We didn't have a home base. So getting that rental kennel space in Petersburg kind of gave us our first grounding. And it is also what led us to be in the KW area and to make roots there for future spaces. In 1999, we were well situated in the KW area, Petersburg and what have you, and it was going really well. We kind of had the doors blown off what we were doing in 1999. We worked with a team at the Life Network. Life Network was developing a new program called Dogs with Jobs, and they were reaching out to folks across Canada doing stories about the great work that dogs do. And they actually helped sponsor Nsd Maggie, who went out to a young boy in Canmore, Alberta. She was one of the first autism service dogs we placed after we'd gotten the charity up and running officially and had started delivering on the program. And we had no money to do that placement out west, and the team at Life Network paid for it and then sent the camera crew out to meet with the family beforehand. They filmed the actual team training, and then they went back a few months later and did a follow-up piece on how the team was doing. It's an amazing story. Dogs with Jobs went on to, it was aired in Canada on the Life Network, and then National Geographic picked it up. I haven't been able to find the videos anywhere online. We have DVDs of the video. I'll talk to Emma about maybe getting it downloaded so we can post it, because it's a pretty awesome video, and we worked really hard on it. But as you can imagine, something goes out over the Life Network, and it went international. And we started getting phone calls from Australia, Iceland, Great Britain, all over the US and Canada wanting these autism service dogs. Everybody was freaking out, and we were completely overwhelmed. And I can honestly say, as bad as our wait list has been for the past few years, back in 2000, it was 10 times worse because of the attention that story garnered. And it was around that time that we learned that we were the first ones in the world doing autism service dogs. Prior to us coming on board and starting that program, nobody in the world had a service dog model for children with autism. And that's why we were getting inundated, because it was groundbreaking at the time back in 1999. So it was pretty exciting. I remember we were at an ADI conference, my very first one. It was in Las Vegas in 2001. And we were in a bar this is probably off topic, but we were in a bar in Las Vegas for the ADI conference, and we were standing having a beer, and the bartender looks at us and said, "Hey, I saw you on TV this morning talking to Chris Fowler." And sure enough, he'd just seen Dogs with Jobs on the National Geographic channel that day, and we happened to walk into that pub that night, and he was all excited that he'd got to meet us and that he'd seen us on TV that day. So it's a pretty small world out there, but that story never gets old. So in 2000, continuing our huge growth curve, we moved out of that rented kennel space in Petersburg and took up residence at an Egg Canada barn out in New Hamburg off Puttycombe Road. It had been an auction house for pigs and sheep, actually, and it was on a pig farm. So you can imagine what it smelled like out there in the summertime training the dogs. It was pretty intense. But what was awesome about the barn was it was huge. We had a huge training space, huge kennel space. It leaked heat like a sieve. It was freezing in the wintertime, and we spent a fortune on heat. But as far as usable space goes, it was dreamy on that front. I'm sure volunteers that were around long enough to have been involved out at the kennel out on Puttycombe Road. The other aspect that made it kind of fun was in the wintertime, the snow would just drift right across the road, and it was commonplace for the local farmer who we rented the barn from to have to bring the tractor out and pull our volunteers and staff cars out of the ditch every winter, which is part of the reason we enjoy where we are now out on Highway 97. It's a little bit more accessible and less impacted by winter weather. So we've had some bad days getting into the office where we currently are, but nothing like it used to be out at the old barn. And of course, there was no Wi-Fi out there back in the day. 2000 was a major, major milestone. Not only did we have Ground Zero to call home, but we had our first paid staff through the generosity of the Ontario Trillium Foundation. They gave us a grant that allowed us to hire our first director of training, a part-time volunteer coordinator, and a full-time trainer. It was a really big year. It's where we made the leap from being 100% volunteer run to having paid staff and making good on the financial commitment and making sure our fundraising was in place so that we could honor our commitment not only to our new staff, but to the dogs that were in our care. At about that time, I think we had about 30 some odd dogs in development. And yeah, there was a lot going on back in those days. 2000 was also the year we joined Assistance Dogs International as a candidate, and started getting involved in the international community of service dog providers. As I mentioned right off the top, I started out as a trainer for the deaf and hard of hearing of service dogs. And when we started NSD, we had big dreams and high hopes, but we did not have a roadmap. And we were all working full time and running the organization and trying to get dogs into the hands of the families that needed them. And we didn't take a lot of time to do a lot of advanced planning. We didn't have a business plan. And we did it ass backwards, to be blunt. But the one thing that made me fall in love with ADI when I learned about it was they had the structure, and they provided us with a roadmap for how to make NSD the best it could be, to make sure that we were doing right by our people and by our dogs. And I'll never forget my first subcommittee meeting with the standards, ADI Standards Committee and Membership Committee, feeling relief at that conference that somebody knew what they were doing and had a roadmap they would share with us so that we could move NSD forward from our very, very humble beginnings into something a bit more serious. And here we are 25 years later. 2001, we started to crank out the dogs and started doing group classes. Prior to this, we were doing in-home placements for all of our dogs. We didn't have the space to do it, and we had no model for doing it. And again, through our ADI contacts, we started doing group classes, bringing the families in without the kids. And one of our challenges with in-home placements with the autism families is that there's a lot going on in people's households, especially if they have young children, and going in with the dog and trying to get their undivided attention was really, really difficult. And I know the families that are on this Zoom will relate to this, and organizationally, we understood how difficult it was for the families to come to team training without their children, to leave their children home in the care of, relatives or caregivers, and how stressful that was. And we did not make that decision lightly, but it was the only way we could get larger number of dogs out into the hands of the families that needed them. But from a training perspective, it gave us a captive audience. We had the parents all to ourselves with no child distractions. We could focus on them and the dog and give them the strongest start possible. And many parents came to team training thinking, woohoo, it's vacation time. I have a week away from home to reconnect with my hubby. We can have some me time. For those of you, again, on the call that have gone through the team training experience, it's anything but a vacation. But it's a model that we've stuck with since 2001, and it works very well for us. And it had the ancillary benefit. It was not a consideration back in 2001, but it very, very, very quickly became apparent. And this is pre-social media even. It became apparent that having families go through team training together really helped the social isolation that autism families feel. We had so many moms who, had very little, if they were stay at home, they had very little engagement with their outside community, limited engagement with other families with children with autism. So bringing them together for team training allowed them to develop a support network that some of them had never had before. And like I said, it wasn't something that we had consciously thought of when we started doing group classes, but it definitely has become one of the key factors that most of our families highlight, is that some of the best friendships and family connections and peer groups that they've been able to access in support of themselves and their kids has been with other families that have gone through the process. And it's one of the things that I'm most proud of is social media makes it so much easier, but the opportunities for all of our clients to expand their social circle in a supportive way is just, like I said, it's just an awesome benefit for everybody involved. 2002, NSD achieved voting status with ADI. We were only the second school in Canada to become voting members of Assistance Dogs International. The first was Pacific Assistance Dogs out in Burnaby, BC. I'll give a shout out here to our partners at PADS, because they were integral in us not only getting involved, they sponsored us at Assistance Dogs International when we were going through our membership stuff, but PADS also helped us get NSD started. They were on the West Coast, so I mean, it was easy because we weren't competing with them for anything puppy raisers, funding, or anything like that. But Laura at PADS was extremely generous with her time. She provided NSD with the first training manuals, our first set of bylaws for our incorporation. PADS really did give us a roadmap. And to this day, I can look back at documents where we've just done a find and replace national service dogs with Pacific Assistance Dog Society. And every now and then I see society in one of our documents, and I'm like, that's because the original document was from PADS. And we missed the word society when we were doing the find and replace on it. But so after we became voting members for Assistance Dogs International, we actually, with PADS, I think it was 2004, PADS hosted the ADI annual conference at Pacific Assistance Dogs out in Vancouver. So the international service dog community descended upon Vancouver. I think it was 2004. And at that time, we had the opportunity to meet some of the other service dog providers in Canada. And at that meeting, the Canadian Association of Guide and Service Dog Schools was essentially born. It wasn't codified until the year after, but the schools all agreed that as Canadian agencies that were accredited by ADI or the International Guide Dogs Federation, we needed to work together on advocacy for our clients, legislative issues, and that we could partner with each other on breeding dogs, training dogs, and all the rest of it. And we've never looked back since then. We work very cooperatively with all of our ADI partners in Canada. 2003 was a huge year for us on that growth curve. Up until 2003, we'd been in a partnership agreement for our food with Martin's, with Technical, and then they got bought out by I forget who, and we lost our sponsorship, our food sponsorship, and we were very grateful in 2003 for Nestle Purina coming in and filling that void. We had, as said here, 125 dogs in training and in development at the time between the breeding program and all the puppies and all our dogs in advanced training. And we were going through truckloads of dog food, and it would have cost us $100,000 a year to feed those dogs, and Purina fed them for free. Not only NSD, but 5 of the major service and guide dog providers in Canada all got fed by Purina. They spent $500,000 or more a year on dog food for the service dog community. And they did that right up until 2019 when the program changed. 2003 also was our very first formal graduation ceremony. We gathered up all our folks and celebrated the last 7 years worth of work and our groups of graduates. And our graduation ceremony for this one was just held at the church on a Saturday afternoon. But it's changed over the years since, but that was our first kind of group recognition for what we were doing. In 2004, we launched our motorcycle ride, and which was going strong until it hit the brick wall that was COVID, but we'll have to discuss more about that for next year. But the motorcycle ride was our next major fundraising event. And as it says here, we had our first meeting of the Canadian Association of Guide and Assistance Dog Schools. It was held in Cambridge. NSD facilitated that meeting and the actual day. And it was a really great first step. The other exciting thing in 2004, as I said, we were well aware by then that we were the only service provider in the world that anybody knew of doing autism service dogs. And we were still being inundated from outside of Canada from programs and people wanting the dogs, and we did not have a lot of money. So we developed a Train the Trainer program, and it was a fee-for-service program for service dog providers who wanted to learn how to do autism service dogs. We partnered with Irish Guide Dogs for the Blind in 2004. They sent a trainer over. She was with us for a month during the dog's advanced training, went home, got her team set up with their dogs in training, and then she came back for another month for the team training and in-home follow-ups with the client so they could learn that side of it. And then one of our trainers went to Ireland and helped them through their first training class, their team training sessions. Irish Guide Dogs for the Blind has gone on to train other service dog providers in Europe, but it was a great partnership, and it not only took the autism program international, but Irish Guide Dogs for the Blind had the resources to in-service several other programs across Europe on how to do autism service dogs. And over the course of our Train the Trainer program, we worked with teams subsequent to Irish Guide Dogs with the team from the Bocolon Foundation in Spain, Righteous Pups in Australia, numerous programs across North America, both in Canada and the US. We in-serviced on starting autism service dogs. And of course, as we sit here, there's hundreds of programs around the world doing autism service dogs today, using the core model that we started with in 1996, and it's just been improved upon from there. And it's the autism service dog programs worldwide account for one of the largest cohorts of service dog users in the world. So it's pretty exciting. 2005, got some awards, which was pretty cool. The R.L. Peterson Award and the Jerry Bloomfield Award. The Bridgeway Foundation, those of you in the KW, especially Cambridge area, the Peterson family is an amazing philanthropic family. They're a fixture in the Cambridge community, the Bridgeway Foundation. And we were very honored in 2005 to receive their award for nonprofit innovation. That award came with a $25,000 grant, which I have to tell you in 2005 is what was keeping the lights on and the dogs fed. We were very, very grateful for that. And then the Bloomfields, Autism Society Award, professional award, is voted on by their memberships, and we were very honored. The Bloomfield family has been involved with NSD for several years. Their son has had 3 of our dogs, and the family is just so integral to the autism community in Ontario. So it was a huge honor to be recognized. 2006, as previously mentioned, it was kind of crazy being out in the middle of the nowhere when we were out at the barn on Puttycombe Road. By 2006, the internet had become pretty much how you did business. Everybody, if you didn't have internet, you were getting left behind, and we had no internet that was functional out on the farm way back in. My staff that are on this call will say we still don't have functional internet. It's all relevant. But back in 2006, it was not practical to be doing business out at the barn. We had the dogs out at the barn, but Ron Winarski's law office down in Cambridge was providing administrative space. We had an office in his office suite for the fundraising and admin department at NSD. So our team was split 30 minutes apart. It was difficult, and the barn made it difficult to do business. So we started looking for something closer to the city, closer to the training spaces that the trainers needed access to, the malls. That's the other problem with being out on the farm in New Hamburg. You had to drive for half an hour to get anywhere to train the dogs. So yeah, we had received a gift in 2005 of an annuity that gave us enough money to put a down payment on the property at 1286 Cedar Creek Road. I had the pleasure in 2007 of meeting the great-great-grandson of the family who built our beautiful house out on 97. The house was originally built by the Cowan family, and his, like I said, great-great-grandson was doing a cross-Canada tour, tracing their roots back across Canada, because they currently lived in Calgary, and stopped by the office during the evening enrichment program and shared with us some amazing pictures from the turn of the 19th century of the house and his family, and the story about how the house was built. All the stones were handpicked out of the surrounding fields. And it's just a really, really great to know that where the house came from, and to be able to share that with everybody. Also in 2006, I forgot about that one. We received the Mayor's Award for Workplace Training and Development. So that was pretty cool. 2007 marked our second biggest corporate partnership. Purina would be our first major corporate partnership that NSD had ever had. Milkbone was our second, and it was a phenomenal partnership. We had such a great team. We were incredibly lucky at the time. It's not this way anymore, but Milkbone Canada was its own entity. They had their own marketing department separate from the US, and they were trying to bring the US model for their community giving program up into Canada. And I'll never forget, because the girl that was in charge of the marketing for the US was down in Texas. And she called me at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock Canada time, 1 o'clock Texas time, and said, we're looking for a charity to partner with that does service dogs for children. We love what you're doing with autism. We have never heard of that before. We're really interested in what you're doing. And I would like to, bring NSD forward as a potential partner for our Canadian giving. And can you get me some information and whatnot? I said, oh, I'd be happy to do that. I'll have it to you by Monday. She goes, oh no, I need it by end of day. And I said, oh, well, it's 3 o'clock here in Ontario. And she's like, oh, my proposal is due on Monday. So I need everything from you by end of day. That was a very late night getting everything to her. But it was well worth the effort, because they went on, as you can see, they donated almost $400,000 over a multi-year span. We got to piggyback off their very extensive marketing resources. They introduced us, and we did a 3-way partnership with them and the Toronto Argonauts. We cut commercials every year that played on the Jumbotron at the Argonauts home games. We were center field for check presentations. They fully sponsored 21 clients and 31 puppies across Canada. And the picture in that was another partnership opportunity Milkbone brought to the table, was a national Milkbone campaign in partnership with Walmart. So I forget what year it was. I think it was 2009, but if you walked into the pet section at Walmart, you would see a display like that with NSD Echo, my last ambassador dog before Charts, in full view. And everywhere in every Walmart across Canada it highlighted our dogs, and the stores did a competition for best end caps, best displays, and they raised a truckload of money for us through Walmart over and above the $398,000. So we still have a great working relationship with Milkbone. They've undergone some ownership changes over the years, but they were certainly integral in keeping NSD alive and functioning through the financial crisis in 2008. And I'll be forever grateful for the team that we worked with through those years with Milkbone. 2008, that was a big year. We did a lot of paperwork in 2008. We did our first ADI accreditation. You might be wondering why, if we've been members since 2000, were we just getting accredited in 2008? That's because the standards program for ADI was under construction when we first joined. And we were actually, some of us sat on the accreditation committee for ADI, on the development committee. I believe it was 2005 when the standards program for ADI was officially rolled out to the ADI membership. And it took them 3 years for the assessors to get through all the applicant programs and get to us, and our turn came up to be accredited. So it wasn't that we didn't want to be accredited before 2008, they just physically couldn't make it happen. But we successfully achieved our accreditation in 2008 and then went on to redo it again successfully in 2013, 2018, and we're coming up on 2023 for the next one. But as I said, Assistance Dogs International has been great partnership agency and really did create a roadmap for us. 2009, we formalized our companion dog program and started providing dogs in a non-service dog role to families with special needs. We had a lot of dogs go out to cutie patooties with Down syndrome. I believe actually that is Winnie, Whoopi's sister. Yeah, the dogs, they're magical. What can we say? 2010, as I mentioned, coming off of the financial crisis, there was a lot of stuff in the news about financials, donations, ethics in charitable fundraising. And at the time, CTV News was doing an investigative report on called Checking Up on Charities, looking out and doing research on, you know, what to look for in an ethical charity, what's good, what's bad, and what questions you should be asking before you make donations. We participated in that investigation, and when the story came out, it was really great because it not only helped to inform donors, it helped us to get to know the Canadian Centre for Philanthropy, which was to become Imagine Canada, and allowed us again to formalize some processes. But their take on it was very helpful in a very difficult time, talking about, you know, leveraging your donations and making the most of every donated dollar. And that's one thing that NSD is super mindful of, is making sure our fundraising costs and our administrative costs do not exceed 30% of our operating budget. We keep fundraising is usually between 8 and 11% of our annual budget. So even today, we do the best that we can to keep the administrative and fundraising costs at a minimum, while still being able to raise the money we need to deliver on the programs. 2010 also, the devil that is Facebook. That was our first year with Facebook and social media. Hard to believe it was 11 years ago. 2010 was also the year we started doing the research into service dogs for veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. We called them skilled companion dogs at the time because it was even new in the States, and like our autism program, we weren't sure how the dogs looked in comparison to other service dogs, what their role would be, what's, you know, the difference between an emotional support dog and a service dog, and how do we navigate all of that. And in the early days of the program, a skilled companion dog was the best definition we can come up with. That moniker did not last very long. By the time we placed our first dog in 2011, it went out as a skilled companion dog, but by 2012, it was a full-on service dog designation, and we'd made that transition. 2011, our PTSD program became a catalyst for NSD just to become better better at mental health awareness for both our clients and our staff. And we took a deep dive into all things mental health and started doing suicide awareness training through Safe Talk and suicide interventions training through Assist, and really built that into our program. We would go on to become one of the first, if not the first, ADI accredited program doing PTSD service dogs to have somebody with a mental health background actually on staff and not just on standby, which was awesome for our clients and for our staff to have somebody with that knowledge base in their back pocket and could help with mental health first aid and suicide awareness and intervention. 2012 was our first puppy camp for all you evening program volunteers and puppy camp volunteers that are out there. We used to, in the pre-COVID days and back in the day, we used to bring the dogs in for a 4-day boot camp just to acclimate them to the kennel, do some assessments on them. That has morphed into our behavioral checklist assessments and stuff, but yeah, those were always fun times when puppy camp was on. 2013, we did our first canine assisted interventions placement with Horizon and Nsd Karma. And we've gone on to do, I believe it's over 30 teams, 30 teams through the CAI program since then. At the time that we started in 2013, we were the first ADI accredited program in Ontario, or Eastern Canada, and one of only 3 in all of Canada doing canine assisted interventions. Pacific Assistance Dogs was the first in Canada to move into that CAI space, and the team out at Dogs with Wings followed behind them shortly thereafter. 2014, we had a transitional donation. We received a legacy gift from Rear Admiral Denny Boyle. He donated $250,000 actually, and specifically for the PTSD program and helping us with some infrastructure pieces. We bought a vehicle for doing client services follow-up, the gray van. Did some work around the house, and he really gave us a foundation to move the program forward. And the sign is on the side of the building today, and we're very grateful for the support to kick that off. From a administrative standpoint, I have to tell you that was the most fun I've had at the bank ever in my NSD career, was taking a personal check for that money. It had come in over Christmas, and the weather was terrible, and somehow the plow had just plowed snow right into the mailbox. So when I dug it out of the snow in the mailbox, the mail that was in there was soaking wet, and I had to lay it out on my desk to dry before I could take it to the bank. And the check with that donation was one of those checks, and it was almost completely destroyed. It was so wet. And it was just a personal check written by his family from the estate. And when I took it into the bank, the person behind the counter just about fell over. And like I said, it was the most fun I've had at the bank ever with NSD. Wounded Warriors Canada came back on board in 2015 as a partner with our PTSD program. Wounded Warriors Canada continues to be our largest supporter on an ongoing basis of our PTSD service dog program. They allowed us to expand the program into the Western provinces. As the only ADI accredited service dog provider doing PTSD service dogs, our dogs were in high demand across Canada, and we just didn't have the resources to service outside of Ontario. And Wounded Warriors made that possible, and we're very grateful for their support. 2016, 20th anniversary, seems like it was not that long ago, but we also went through a rebrand in 2016. We reimagined our mission statement, our image, look, and feel. And we landed on our current mission and vision that we're currently using now in lovely ways. And you'll notice as I've gone through the logos have changed over time, but we'll be with this one for a while yet. It has served us well since 2016. In 2017, we started our involvement and became very actively involved in standards development in Canada. I chaired the Canadian General Standards Boards. I co-chaired the Standards Board committee that was tasked on developing a service dog standard, a national service dog standard. Also in 2017, we worked with the Alberta government to help them develop their standards program and their testing mechanism for their Service Dog Act. That was those two things were massive projects, and NSD was excited to be in a leadership role in order to work with the government on those policies. 2018, puppies. 2018 is when NSD joined Assistance Dogs International's breeding cooperative and started to put in place all the awesome stuff that's going on in our breeding program right now. We just had puppies flying in from BC. We have a dog coming in from Alberta at some point. And it's been a great partnership with the breeding cooperative. And we've done some great work with developing our puppy development program, our behavioral checklist assessments, and temperament testing on the dogs. But that all started in 2018. And as you can note there, we also got reaccredited by Imagine Canada and ADI. I didn't talk much in 2013 about Imagine Canada, but we got our first accreditation with Imagine Canada. It is essentially the Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval for charities. Imagine the accreditation, they do an audit every 5 years like ADI. And basically it lays out charitable governance, best practices for charitable governance. So they oversee financial, to make sure that charities are managing their finances, not only appropriately, but in a transparent way. They also set standards for board management, staff management, volunteer management, and again, Imagine Canada back in 2013, we were trying to make the transition from an operational board of directors to a governance board of directors. And it was a difficult transition. We'd started in 2010. And again, we lacked a roadmap. We had a vision of how to get there. We just didn't have and we had the paperwork. We just didn't know how to engage with the paperwork and the standards and the policies to pull it all together and make it work. And the Imagine Canada Standards Program actually gave us the roadmap to really fine tune what we were doing. They also provided us with the feedback we needed for the board to make that transition. And Allison, if I still got you there and you can jump in, Allison Archambault is our current board chair. She's been with the board since 2010, I believe. And she was kind of the catalyst for getting us on board to transition from an operational board to a governance board. And with that roadmap from Imagine Canada, she and I kind of shaped it into being between 2011 and 2012 and made it possible for us to be successful in 2013 to get accredited. Did you want to speak at all to that, Allison?
I'm happy to speak to it. I've heard this story so many times of NSD's history, and I'm always inspired and challenged through it. The board of directors, as you mentioned, moved from an operations board to a governance board in order to support NSD's work in a different way and to recruit different sorts of directors with different sorts of strengths. Pardon me, to to help NSD be as successful as possible. So we have an ambitious strategic plan ahead of us. We recently met to discuss the Vision 2021, whether it's valid, whether it needed some updates, and to take us into the next 3 years. We've got a few pivots to make. Obviously, COVID has impacted all businesses and not-for-profits, but we have full confidence that moving forward, it's the right vision to take NSD into the next 25 years. And I just want to take a moment on behalf of the board to thank the clients for inspiring us, the staff for all of their hard work, and the volunteers for partnering with the staff to do the hard work to achieve the vision. It's really incredible what NSD has achieved over the past 25 years, and I know that we're just getting started.
Thank you. Well said. I agree. And I'm being mindful of the time. I only have a couple more slides left, and then we'll take questions. The picture on this one, Allison, is for you. It is one of my all-time favorite pictures, and it popped up in my news feed earlier this week on Facebook as well. As Allison mentioned, the board really, in 2019, we went through a whole visioning process. We created a visioning for the organization that took us out to 2022. It was an amazing process to go through, both as a staff and a board. We're just undertaking it again now, but one of the things in 2019 is we reaffirmed our core values, valuing our staff and our volunteers, being passionate about the people we serve, and creating a strong financial foundation. And we look forward to sharing with you our vision out to 2025 as we work through it over the coming months. Stay tuned. Background on this beautiful picture, that of course is Robin Williams, and that lovely puppy is Nsd Presley, who was he was a magical boy. And Allison had the very good fortune of meeting Robin when Presley was a puppy all of those years ago. And this picture always reminds me that mental health can impact people no matter who they are, how they live, how famous they are, and that no matter the smile, no matter the comedy that comes out of people's behavior, and you never know what's going on inside of people's heads, and we need to be kind to each other. That's what this picture represents for me, because knowing Mr. Williams' history and whatnot, and how he passed away, you'd never know that watching how he lived his life from afar. And certainly this picture is it's just lovely. But it is a reminder that you never know what's going on in somebody's life, and just to be kind. And it's an awesome picture, and thank you for making the opportunity available, Allison. Lastly but not leastly, our 2021, I rolled it all together because, COVID. I got nothing to say about COVID that hasn't already been said. In looking back, it's kind of sad that the last 25 years got kind of, the big celebration of it got hijacked, but worth noting, we still, some of the, I've said it before, some of the changes that have come about through our programs as a result of COVID, yes, we've lost some things that we haven't been able to do. We've lost some programs through the volunteer stuff that just, we've transitioned away from, and we've created new ones. We have for sure been resilient in the face of adversity, but we've also learned some great stuff through COVID. We have Zoom. We are engaging with clients on a whole new level that will ultimately provide them with greater service, not less service. now that everybody is very comfortable in this Zoom world that we now live in, it does have its benefits from a client perspective, and it will allow us to deliver our programs in a more cost-effective way so that we can redirect resources into dogs and hands-on client and volunteer work, and supporting our staff. So we're super grateful. Our theme for our 25th year, it was changing lives through service. And I know it sounds odd because NSD is all about giving back to the community, the autism community, the PTSD community, our CAI partners with our facility dogs. But as an organization, we wanted to give back. And over the course of the year, the staff has been involved in a number of initiatives. In the picture there, we're actually making sandwiches for the 519 Community Collective. We made, I think, 400 sandwiches that day that went out into the community for folks who are food insecure. We have done a couple of those and donated food and items to 519 Community Collective. There's a blood drive that was going on. Emma, when's the blood drive? Through the Canadian Blood Association?
Yeah, our last donation day is December 15th for any of our supporters, but it's run all year, and we've had over 26 donations from our supporters so far.
Yeah. So through Canadian Blood Services, you can join the NSD team in giving blood. At the beginning of the year, our dogs even donated blood to the veterinary programs for canine blood donation. So we have been giving back to our community more directly than just through our programs, and done it as a team building exercise. And I'm super proud of everybody for their commitment to our greater community outside of our NSD community. And it just, with everything going on in the world with COVID, it just seemed like the right theme for where we're at in our 25th anniversary. To wrap up, I know I've blown through the hour, but I just want to thank everybody. Like Allison said, we are in a really good spot to roll NSD into the next 25 years. We'll share more as we can, but we have a lot of cool stuff coming up, and it's super exciting. And as somebody who's been at it for 25 years, it's nice to still be as excited about our future now as I was 25 years ago. We, as an agency, innovation has been at the heart of most of what we've done. We've been on the leading edge. I am super duper proud of that. And we're not done, is where I'll leave you with that. I'm not going to go into the details of what's next, but when it comes to innovation and keeping NSD on the cutting edge of the service dog world, we are nowhere near done. We have lots of big stuff coming in the next couple of years. And I hope you guys will hang with us as we make it happen. We'll need you.